Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving right into a completely defining moment in modern music history. We're going to break down exactly how the Red Hot Chili Peppers took their frenetic, super hyperkinetic blend of funk and punk, stripped it down to its absolute core, and ended up defining a completely new alternative sound for the 1990s.
I mean, think about it. How exactly does spending 30 days in a supposedly haunted mansion, combined with a radical shift to a minimalist bass philosophy and a deeply personal acoustic guitar riff, completely rewrite the rules of alternative rock? Well, that is exactly what we're going to unpack today.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to hit the funk rock catalyst, the slap and pop style, those crazy Houdini mansion sessions, the melodic shift, the price of fame, and finally, wrap up with their enduring legacy. Let's get into it.
Okay, part one, the funk rock catalyst. We are leaving the 80s behind. If you look right here, the contrast is just stark. On the left side, you've got their 1989 era with the album Mother's Milk, guided by producer Michael Beinhorn. Back then, guitarist John Frusciante was pushed toward this super heavy metal guitar tone, and the bass was literally described as a constant onslaught of notes. It was, frankly, creatively restricting for them. But then, they sign with Warner Brothers, they bring in producer Rick Rubin, and bam, everything changes. Rubin pushed them toward this raw, incredibly spacious direction, really leaning into a melodic funk and punk fusion. The distortion was dialed way, way back, and it made room for a completely new dynamic.
Which brings us to part two, the slap and pop style and Flea's massive minimalist shift. So, if we really want to understand the mechanics of this new sound, we have to look at this slap and pop style. It relied on these very specific triplet patterns. It's like this galloping rhythm that was totally different from the heavy metal onslaught of their past. This rhythmic engine is what drove their crossover sound. Basically, Flea was taking traditional old-school funk elements and weaponizing them for a rock audience, creating these grooves that were super intricate but just fundamentally grounded.
And this is the absolutely crucial part. It was a total philosophical shift. Flea literally said, I've really got to chill out and play half as many notes. Space is good. Space is good. By consciously deciding to play fewer notes, the ones he actually did play stood out so much more. He proved that the silence, literally the empty space between the notes, is what actually makes a groove infectious. It was a massive, game-changing revelation for the band's entire sound.
So, with this new less is more philosophy, let's jump into part three, the Houdini Mansion Sessions, 30 days of total isolation.
Look at these wild conditions, guys. At Rick Rubin's suggestion, the band basically moves into this massive mansion where the illusionist Harry Houdini allegedly once lived. They bring in all their recording gear and just isolate themselves for over 30 days. Anthony Kiedis literally recorded his lead vocals in his bedroom. John Frusciante spent his downtime painting and recording in his own space. But drummer Chad Smith? No way. He completely refused to sleep there. Depending on who you ask, he either just wanted to be with his wife or he was absolutely convinced the place was haunted. So he just commuted every single day on his motorcycle. But this extreme isolation, combined with that slightly spooky atmosphere, deeply shaped their daily creative output.
All of that weirdness brings us to part four, a melodic shift. We're talking space, distortion, and raw emotion.
So, while Flea is over there playing fewer notes, John Frusciante makes this incredibly deliberate choice to completely back off the heavy metal distortion on his guitar. Instead of this thick, overwhelming wall of noise, he goes for a much cleaner, highly unprocessed Stratocaster tone. This meant his guitar lines and Flea's bass lines weren't fighting to be the loudest thing in the room anymore, they were actually dancing around each other. Giving the music that space allowed for so much more nuance and clarity.
And this newfound musical space? It gave Anthony Kiedis the room to explore this wild, emotional duality. On one side, you've got the exuberant stuff, these wildly energetic funk anthems packed with themes of sex, lust, and just total bravado, like in Sir Psycho Sexy or Give It Away. But then, right next to it, you've got absolute anguish. Songs like Breaking the Girl digging into his fear of his own shifting relationships, and Under the Bridge directly confronting the profound, crushing loneliness of his past heroin addiction.
Let's actually break down how this delicate balance worked on their biggest hit, Under the Bridge. Step 1. Kiedis writes this incredibly tragic, highly personal poem about his lowest point with addiction in downtown LA. Step 2. Rick Rubin actually stumbles upon this poem in Kiedis' notebooks. He has to push him to share it with the band because Kiedis thought it was just way too soft for the Chili Peppers. Step 3. Frusciante hears it, and because the lyrics are so incredibly sad, he has this brilliant magical instinct to write happier, contrasting chords for the intro to balance the whole thing out. That specific tension is what made the song an absolute masterpiece.
But of course, there's always a catch. Part 5. The Price of Fame, Explosive Success, and Fractured Bonds.
Just look at this timeline. It shows you how insanely fast things unraveled in the real world. September 91, the album drops. By January 92, Under the Bridge completely explodes, hitting number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Suddenly, they are yanked out of the underground and thrown into massive mainstream arena tours. But then, look at May 1992. Just months into this massive explosion of fame, John Frusciante abruptly quits the band before a show in Tokyo. It literally fell apart in the blink of an eye.
The crazy thing is, the very success they had worked so hard for is exactly what alienated Frusciante. He wanted to stay in the underground scene. He actually viewed their mainstream popularity as shameful. He was battling severe depression and simultaneously started experimenting with heroin. And this internal friction didn't stay quiet. It boiled right over onto the stage. He literally resorted to deliberate on-stage sabotage. During their huge appearance on Saturday Night Live, Frusciante intentionally played dissonant, out-of-tune notes during Under the Bridge, just leaving Kiedis completely hung out to dry on live TV in front of millions of people. Shortly after that, the tension broke him and he walked away entirely.
Which leads us to our final section, Part 6, An Enduring Legacy, Rewriting Alternative Rock.
14 million. That is the staggering number of copies this record sold worldwide. Think about that for a second. For an album born out of weird jams, minimalist bass lines, and deeply personal poetry about addiction, its absolute domination of the global mainstream is just astounding.
The cultural footprint of this record is just undeniable. It completely reconfigured the relationship between funk, metal, and punk. It proved you didn't need a massive wall of distortion to be heavy. You just needed a deep pocket and a great groove. Releasing on the exact same day as Nirvana's Nevermind, these two records practically single-handedly propelled the 90s alternative rock explosion. To this day, Blood Sugar Sex Magik consistently lands on lists of the greatest albums of all time.
It's an amazing journey of artistic discovery for sure, but it's also a pretty stark look at the harsh reality of fame. I want to leave you with this final thought to really ponder. What happens when the perfect, beautiful space you fight so hard to create in your music is the exact thing that ends up destroying the space in your life? It's the incredible, yet highly destructive cost of creating a true musical masterpiece. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring, and I'll see you next time.